Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh, and a very good day everyone. So today for this video lecture I will be explaining on how to design your questionnaire. So let us recap few things before we proceed with this topic. First thing first, you have done your proposal presentation whereby you proposed your introduction, your background of studies, as well as your suggested methodology. So basically, you have covered the first three chapters of your report writing. So the next thing is for you to carry out your research, and also, sorry, for you to carry out your research in a sense that for you to distribute your questionnaire as suggested by me before this. The only instrument that will be looking or that will be using for report writing is questionnaire. Much easier, um, is it's much easier because you just need to construct the items or the questions, and then you distribute the questions to your friends and ask them to respond on in order for you to complete the survey. Now, coming back to what I've said just now, you have covered the first three chapters. Now, what you need to do is to design your questionnaire. So, how are you going to design the questions? What kind of questions are you going to put in your questionnaire? These are the things that you may want to ask, that you are wondering right now. So, basically, this video lecture is to assist you on how to design your questionnaire. Okay, so basically I've covered this part. Just move on to the next one. Now, the objectives in designing your questionnaire. Of course, you must know why. Why do we design questionnaire? Why do we come up with questionnaire? So number one is to maximize the proportion of subjects answering our questionnaire. That is the response rates. Now, if you choose interview as part of your instrument, you can only interview to certain amount of people. That means very limited, because an interview session can be quite lengthy, very long. The duration of time is very long. And if let's say you want to observe a class, it won't take a day or two. At least you need to observe, before and after. That will also require time. But just imagine having questionnaire distributed to at least 30 respondents. So, within a day, you can already get data responded by 30 respondents. So that is why uh, I suggest in the beginning of our session to use questionnaire as your main instrument to get your data. And of course, number two, the objective is to obtain accurate, relevant information of your survey, because the questions are directly answered by your respondents who may be affected by the issue that you pointed out in your questionnaire. Okay, in order to decide, what are we looking at in your questionnaire? Now, the major part of your questionnaire basically are questions based on your objectives, because at the end of the day, what you want to do is to find out whether or not your objectives are met. Okay, and of course, there are some other information that you'll get in distributing your questionnaire or in analyzing your data, whereby you get the information, the demographic information of your respondents. Okay, now before we proceed, let us look at types of questionnaire that we have. Okay, uh, there are two main types. We have close-ended and open-ended. All right, so we'll be looking at open-ended because it's very simple. Now, open-ended is where you ask a question and then you leave it blank, and then you give the freedom to the respondents to respond to it. Now, there are many advantages of using open-ended. Number one, it allows exploration of the range of possible themes arising from an issue. Now, when you do not make it rigid, that means everyone has a freedom, has a space to respond to it, to give any kind of answer. And number two, it can be used if a comprehensive range of alternative choices cannot be compiled. In the sense that when you want to come up with, let's say you want to use close-ended, and you realize that the options are too many. So you may want to opt using open-ended instead. But of course, I would highly suggest and advise my students to use close-ended questions because it'll be much easier for you to do the analysis. All right. And it helps you, because open-ended, the answers can be subjective. Um, there will be varieties of it, of the answers, and then you have to classify them into groups in order for you to do a concrete and comprehensive analysis. Now, close-ended is a bit different because it's easy. When we talk about survey, when you give the options, all they need is just to choose the option which is best suit them. Okay. All right, you can look at the advantages stated here. All right, now let us look at the types of close-ended. Now we have number one, choice of categories. Okay, for example, here, what is your marital status? Then they choose whether single, married, divorced, or widowed. And then we also have the Likert style scale, like strongly agree up to strongly disagree. And then we also have differential scales, like you give them number, extremely interesting to extremely dull, 1 to 10, for example. Or you can also use a diagrammatic differential scale by using an arrow, for example, yeah, like the one that we have here, by using an arrow. Normally, sometimes, when do we actually use this kind of close-ended question? Is when sometimes you ask a kid, how painful is or how hurtful is the wound, for example. They will you say that less hurtful this side and very hurtful, so they can just simply choose. No, this can be applicable to illiterate people or kids, young kids. Okay, we also have checklist, like in this case, all right, whereby you can choose, or we ask you to rearrange based on, whether or not you're interested in or less interested in. So, can also be done in such a way. Okay, so these are the few things that you need to wording of individual questions. That means what are the things that you need to consider when you want to construct the questions. Okay, number one, we try to avoid using technical terms and jargon. Remember that not everyone knows the terms and the jargon. So if possible, try to explain in layman's term. That means try to use simple words that everyone understands. Number two, avoid vague or imprecise terms. Sometimes you may want to avoid using terms or vague terms that you yourself are not really sure, and then try to avoid using them in the questions because that can somehow complicate the answers or the responses. Okay. If let's say there is a definition of few terms or terminologies, I would highly suggest you to define the terminologies, all right? And then try to avoid complex sentences, as I mentioned to you just now. Use simple words, simple sentences. Provide reference frames, okay, should you have one. And yes, avoid double barrel questions, like for example, do you think the president should lower taxes and spending? For example, you're asking two things in one question. So what if I, and then the let's say the options are yes and no. So what if my answer is the president should lower the tax but not spending? So I have no choice here, no option that suits with my response. Because if I choose yes, that means I agree on both lower taxes and spending. And if I say no, or I choose no, that means I do not agree on both lower taxes and spending. So double barrel question means that in one question you have two things to ask. So always, in order to avoid double barrel, then separate these two things. You can First question should be, do you think the president should lower the taxes? Question mark, yes and no. Question number two, do you think the president should lower the spending? Question mark, yes and no. So you will get, the answers or the responses that are very objective, that basically answered the question. Okay. Um, When you use scales, make sure they are ordinal. That means if let's say you're using strongly agree up to, sorry, strongly disagree up to strongly agree. You cannot say that strongly disagree, then you have strongly agree, then come back to strongly disagree. You cannot be jumbling up the scales, yeah. And avoid questions using leading, emotional, or evocative language. Um, for example, if you say that, um, mm, for example, sleeping is not healthy, right? Now, when you have this kind of question, you are actually leading the respondents to respond exactly what you want. Now, as a person who is carrying out a survey, not you should not be too biased. You have to stay neutral. So your questions too have to stay neutral. Cannot be too biased. All right. And then if you want a single answer, make sure your answer choices are unique and include all possible responses. Okay. If you do not want to make it open-ended, then make sure your options cover everything. All right. Also, answer choices should anticipate all possibilities, as I mentioned just now. Now, you may also have questions like, how long should my questionnaire be? Well, if you ask me, it should be short and sweet. You only ask things that have to do with the objectives of your study. Do not go and ask things that are not relevant or in relation to your study. Okay, sometimes we may think that, oh, because my questionnaire just a 1 page long, therefore I think I need to add more questions. But you will realize later on when you do the analysis that your questions are not basically relevant or related to your study. So make sure that your questions are just nice for you to meet up the objectives. Now, this is how you arrange the questions in your questionnaire. Make sure that you ask them from general questions to something that is very specific. Give them some easy questions first before you move on to the more difficult ones. You can also, start or begin with something that are factual, something that is very factual before you move on to something that is abstract. You can begin with closed format questions and end with open-ended, and make sure that you start with questions that is relevant to the main subject. Okay. Now, for your, I mean, for EWC 661, this is how I want you to arrange your questionnaire. Now, you divide the questions into different sections. Now, section A is normally what we call demographic profiles, where you ask for their age, gender, program, occupation, hometown. Now, when you ask this kind of questions, make sure that you are asking, although this is demographic profile, but make sure that the information is in relation to your topic. Now, for example, if you notice that your respondents are of the same age, most of them will be of the same age. That means equally the same or more or less the same. Now, what's the point of asking for age if they are of the same age, correct? Now, if let's say you're focusing only on female respondents, now what's the point of asking for gender? So make sure when you ask the questions in your demographic profiles, they are somewhat in relation to your topic. Now, section B, section C, so on and so forth, we design the questions based on the objectives. So if you have two objectives, then there should be like section B for objective number 1 and section C for objective number 2, so that when you do your analysis, it will be much easier. All right, believe me, we'll come to that part later on. All right, now how many questions per section? Well, that depends on you. The more the better. And what kind of questions should I be using? Well, that also depends on you. You can just refer back to types of questions just now, like open-ended or closed-ended. Even in closed-ended, you can choose whether options, rearranging. That is entirely up to you. Okay, how you are going to the types of questions that you want to add in, and also how many number of questions. That depends on you and your group members, you discuss. But make sure that the section B, C onwards, they are actually classified based on the objectives of your study. So section B, questions for first objective. Section C, questions for second objective. If you have 3, then section D for third objective. Then it will be much easier. Okay. Yep. These are the format of your questionnaire. Okay. All right. There must be a bit of introduction. Must explain to the respondents what this survey is all about. Then you have the demographic profiles, primary, secondary, and of course, close or thanking note. Okay, how to administer your questionnaire? There are two types, whether you self-administered, that means you, if it is a written survey, then you distribute the survey to your friends in your classroom, for example, and then you wait for them to respond. And or can also be an interview whereby you interview them, you via phone call, for example, and then you read the questions for them, and then you ask them to answer or choose the choices, and then you tick on your own. All right. You can also use online questionnaires. Okay, these are suggested online questionnaires by Google, but believe me, I think so far the one that is free and available for all is Google Forms. The rest you have to pay if you want to upgrade the service. All right. So it begins the journey to questionnaire land. So I wish all the best and good luck to all of you. I hope that you'll be able to come up with good questionnaires. Have fun. Thank you.